It's been a journey of discovery. I guess there's a mild, fascination that I had with him. The quotes are very famous. I think I have a book of, or I had a book of quotes on my bookshelf. It was just the opportunity to play this iconic character. Roles they come across the desk. You're not. I'm not someone out there like searching or craving to play a particular role. Or I was very wary of doing it. Not only is he so iconic and so famous, but there's a great many actors that have played him before me. When you've got people like Richard Burton and Albert Finney, Robert Hardy, they're big shoes to step into.
Working Title, who I've worked with many times before, sent me the screenplay by Anthony McCarten. I laughed a lot. The script, surprisingly, given its title, Darkest Hour, is actually very, very funny. So I laughed, and then I cried. And I was quite surprised by that reaction. I called up Eric Fellner and I said, this is really, really good, but I'm not sure that I'd go and see a movie about Churchill. Eric and I talked more about it, and he said, well, what about Gary Oldman? And as soon as Gary's name came up, I knew that I'd go and see that movie. Gary's, been a hero of mine since I was about 15, since he played Sid Vicious in Sid and Nancy. And the idea of a career that goes from Sid Vicious to Winston Churchill seemed like too tantalizing, really. When I met Gary, I think we were both kind of a bit nervous of meeting each other, really. I was certainly nervous of meeting Gary, and I was surprised to find that Gary was kind of nervous of meeting me. And we went outside and vaped together. And by the end of that vape, we were like brothers, really. Brothers. That was it.
That's a true story.
I sort of grew up with images of Winston Churchill and this rather strange-looking woman who was his wife. She had a very particular hairdo, and her clothes were all seemed to be from another era. Always very, very elegant. But apart from that, I didn't really know much about her. And then I discovered that she was an absolute fighter and defended many, many different causes and was incredibly engaged during the war and was an immense support to this man who was riddled with doubt and insecurities. And what I think is so fascinating about this film is that you have this man who was able to articulate all this incredible feelings of what's the word, pride in this country, and to kind of engage people and get people together and unite people. But the man himself, the man who was creating all these amazing speeches and things like that, was actually just a human being like any other. And what I find what was attractive to me in playing this part was the fact that I could actually help reveal the very human side to him, the man, rather than the hero.
I mainly just watched whatever newsreel stuff and whatnot that I could watch of his. I knew Jared Harris was playing him in the Crown, and I didn't want to go near that. I think Jared Harris is a fantastic actor. I didn't want to get that kind of like spooky stuff, and that's it. I looked at a bunch of stuff and then tried very hard to just kick the football correctly. That's it.
I mean, in terms of other performances, I didn't watch them. I watched Robert Hardy when it was on TV many, many years ago, but I didn't want to be contaminated or influenced by other people's performances. We've all got an idea of who Churchill was, and a lot of that comes from the people that have played him, not necessarily the actual man. The footage, for me, the newsreels and the Pathé footage was paramount. I had, I guess, an impression of what I thought who Churchill was, and then I started to watch this news footage, and there's one particular piece of him in Africa where he's in a tent with some of these soldiers, and he's uncharacteristically drinking beer because that's all they had. and it's hot and it's swarming with flies, and I mean, he's like a pig in manure. You know, he's with the guys at the front. He was a soldier. He had great admiration for these people that put themselves in harm's way. He's alive. He's alert. He's skipping around, and he's 65, yet he's moving, jumping around like a sort of 30-year-old. There's a sparkle in his eye. There's a cherubicness about him. So I started to see a man, and even Joe and I talked about it a little in rehearsal, because occasionally we would be in rehearsal and you would say, he's really naughty, isn't he? He's quite sort of cheeky. And so I think that's how I started to sort of build the man. And my admiration for him and is tenfold, working on this film and having the opportunity to play him. It was a privilege every day to come in and play him. As I said earlier, you know, here's a man who's 65 years old and he takes on Adolf Hitler. So for me to sit there in 3 hours of makeup is, you know, could be a lot worse, couldn't it?
That's true. Gary knew of a prosthetics guy called Kazuhiro who lived in a warehouse. Is he actually agoraphobic? He might be. He never seems to leave. He lives in a warehouse in downtown Los Angeles and makes these incredible sculptures. So we went and saw the master, Kazuhiro, and very quickly it became apparent that Kazuhiro was going to be able to transform Gary as was required. There was a lot of, I mean, you know, Gary prepared for the role for many, many months, and so there was a lot of trial and error with Kazu. And the most important thing was to make sure that we didn't, you know, end up with something that looked very much like Winston, but was impossible to act through. So it was finding the right balance between Gary and Winston, really. There are certain actors who are like magicians, you know, they're shapeshifters, and somehow by sheer triumph of the imagination, they are able to transform themselves and make you believe that they are that character. And that's an incredibly powerful imagination. It's slightly weird, and a form of kind of a dark art, possibly. But they're able to do it. They're able to make you see things that aren't really there. And Gary is one such wizard.
For me to be able to do it, I had to, as Joe said, you can't completely lose the actor. We had to we went too far, and then we came back, you know, so some of the pieces we eliminated, you know, so it was a sort of, it was just a working together and seeing how it was, how doable it was. I needed to at least see, for me, Winston looking back at me. I think we achieved a balance between him and Gary. Kazu is quite, talking of magicians, he's quite talented, and we lured him back from retirement because he was in the movie business and now is a fine arts, you know, artist. So we got him. We managed to get him out of retirement just to specifically do this.
You know, when I first sent the script to Kristin, she said no, she didn't want to do that. And I said, okay, can I come and see you in Paris and just have a cup of tea with you? No vaping. No vaping, no. Tea with Kristin. You have to judge the actor.
Choose your weapon.
Yeah, so I went over to Paris to meet her, and I explained to Kristin what an important and wonderful role this was and how she should really play the role, and it was going to be amazing and fabulous, and she was going to be extraordinary, and I was going to really, you know, give her a lot of attention, which is often what an actor requires. And then there was a moment where she looked kind of dreamily off and said, you know, Clemmy had very good ankles. And I knew I had her. Do you know what I mean? I had her then. And I knew if she's starting to
Vanity.
obsess about the ankles, I had her. And funnily enough, the ankles were a recurring theme throughout the process of the movie. Gary was all about the prosthetics. Kristin was all about the ankles.
Yeah, that's the sort of actress I am.
The voice.
Mine was all about the shirts. All about the shirts. All about the shirts. All about the suit. That's what mine was.
We've got
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey, you